So throughout our lives, our brain is constantly rewiring itself through 5 distinct life phases. That's according to a new study. And of course, we bring in our medical expert, Dr. Kohli, to talk to us about this. Well, let's start with the study. What does it say?
Very fascinating. I mean, we thought the brain just ages linearly, right? It gets older every day. But what we realize is that we have these inflection points in our lives where it's almost like the brain is a different organ. It's like turning on a new program. So think about it like your phone. You install a new software update in these 5 phases, and that's what determines not just how your brain functions, but in fact how you get disease. So it's giving us a lot of insight into mental health disorders, into dementia. And so these 5 phases are essentially, the first one happens around age 9, when you go from childhood to adolescence. Next one is adolescence to adulthood. Now we would have thought that that would happen in our late teens or early 20s. It's at 32, actually, when you see that switch happening. The next one after that is when you go into early aging, that's at 66. And then the final one is around age 83. So fascinating study about how our brains age.
That is super interesting. First of all, I believe that 32, maybe not 32, but especially, I don't know. I think boys are different than girls. Brain maturity at times,
sure.
Especially in their teenage years. Also, like people that do you account for like pregnancy brain?
Yes.
Or menopause brain. I mean, people talk about that all the time. Like, I'm not thinking clearly, but they're not. How do you know what phase you're in?
Yeah, so it's mostly dependent on age. Now, as you said, there's a little bit of variability by genders, but there's a huge influence also of our social being on our brain. So think about what happens in our early 30s. We start to become parents for the first time, both men and women, right? And then menopause is a huge inflection point for women. So women's brains in general age slower than men's brains. They're metabolically more efficient. No surprise there. Yeah, exactly. But what happens is a quick drop off at menopause. So menopause is almost like the women's brains sort of fall off a cliff. And then you start to see women getting more degenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's compared to men, because estrogen has such a protective effect on the brain, and that gets taken away.
So according to this study, when are we firing on all cylinders? When are we at our strongest, most efficient brain phase?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. So when you're a kid, think about it like a tree that's growing out of control. You're just kind of going everywhere, meandering around. That adolescent phase from age 9 to 32, your brain is working on all cylinders at that time. In fact, because it's working on all cylinders, you're the most prone to mental health illnesses as well during that particular phase. And that's when your personality is developing. That's when a lot of the mental health stuff starts to come out. Then in that adulthood phase, when you're at 32 to 66, you essentially plateau with your intelligence, with your personality, even with many of the diseases that you get, they plateau around that time.
Wow, that's funny. I feel like I learn more from 32 to my age now than I have at any stage in my life.
So it's not necessarily how much you learn, Phil, it's how your brain is processing that information and forming those circuits. So it's essentially the efficiency power. Think about it like the RAM or the memory on your computer. It's the highest, peaks at 32, and then it plateaus in our adulthood, and then it starts to decline as we get older. Now, the nice thing is we can control how it declines, and that's what I want the take-home message to be.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, what can we do?
Is there collagen for the brain? Doubtful.
There is. So what is the #1 anti-aging medicine that has ever been on this earth?
Botox?
That's what I've heard before, but no.
I was kidding.
Exercise.
Good diet.
Yes, so exercise is the best way you could do anti-aging, using essentially more brain power with the puzzles and learning a new language, learning a new skill that creates what's called, what's that?
Reading?
Reading, yeah. Especially if you're reading in another language. But anytime you're using different parts of your brain, that creates cognitive reserve. So that makes more of a buffer so that you're sort of declining at a lower rate. And I like to say as a cardiologist, what's good for the heart is good for the brain. So if you're keeping your heart healthy because you're eating right, not overweight, you're managing the blood vessel risk factors, your cholesterol, your blood sugar, your blood pressure, all of those, that prevents the little blood vessels in the brains from blocking up. Because after that 66, that's what happens. That's when we start to have dementia, blood pressure issues, kidney issues, heart issues, all that affect our brain's capacity, computing power.
Super interesting.
Yeah, and knowing's
especially
half
for
the battle,
mental
right?
health too. I think that's great because wow, we got to pay attention to that.
Well, and for women now, we're thinking about postmenopausal hormone replacement therapy in the first 5 to 10 years after menopause to maintain their brain health, to prevent that sort of drop off that I talked about. And that's becoming something that they're doing a lot of research on as well.
All right, Dr. Kohli, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kohli.